Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. Open borders, catch and release, CRT, DEI, legacy media, men and women's sports, the teachers union. We know the harm that's been done. That harm is the reason that we fight on, why many of you are here. But each year as I come back to PLC and have the fortune of being the moderator or the MC for the day, I challenge myself and I challenge you to think about not only what we're against, but what we're for. Not only the problems we see, but the opportunities that are there for our nation and our state. To kick things off today, there's no more important subject than education, what our children are learning in the workforce of the 21st century. To lead us in a thoughtful discussion, we have two presenters. The first is well known to us as a Pennsylvanian, Mary Stifler. Mary is the Pennsylvania lead, the Pennsylvania director of AFPI, the America First Policy Institute, the organization committed and dedicated to putting the president's agenda into action. She is so moved to be involved that she even jumped in and became part of the president's reelection. Now she works to make sure his agenda takes place. And if we're going to have a discussion on education, there's no one more qualified to lead that than the United States Secretary of the Department of Education, the Honorable Linda McMahon. Like so many in the President's cabinet, Secretary McMahon is not only an expert in her field of education, but in the public and private sector, someone who's had to sign the front of checks and balance the books and make businesses work. And she spent a career in education, including stints on the Connecticut Board of Education and Sacred Heart University. To lead us in our kickoff conversation about the future of education and preparing a workforce for the 21st century, we welcome to the stage Mary Stifler and the Honorable Linda McMahon.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back to Pennsylvania, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Yes. We have a ton to go through today, so we're going to dive right in. Madam Secretary, last month you celebrated the one-year anniversary of your swearing in. And over the past year, you visited over 30 states across the country. What have you learned on these visits, and how has your first year changed your perspective on education?
Well, thanks, Mary. As of today, I think we're 32 states now. So we just keep checking them off. It's the goal to get to all 50 states. And the reason that I'm traveling to all 50 states is because I really want to listen to people on the ground. I'm visiting schools. I'm visiting schools of all kinds, public, private, micro schools, high schools, middle schools, and universities, because I really want to know what the issues are and how we can best serve these institutions, but how we can best serve our students, because I think we have definitely failed them so far. I actually just left a press conference in Harrisburg, and not far, obviously, and we're in the Capitol, and one of the representatives from Pennsylvania, this was a stat that just blew me away, said that in Harrisburg, that only 12% of high school seniors could read with proficiency, and only 3% could do math with proficiency. Now, I was absolutely astounded by that stat. On a national basis, according to the NAEP scores, which is our national report card, about 30 to 35% of high school seniors can read proficiently, and about the same in math, pretty much the same for 8th grade. But that 12 and 3% really, really struck me. Shocking. So being here, in Pennsylvania, I think I just wanted to mention that to you folks who are here today, to see how important what we are trying to do with the Department of Education is returning it to the states, so the states are empowered. Governors are empowered, superintendents are empowered, but more importantly, parents are empowered for our, school choice provision. So what have I learned in this year? I've learned that there are some incredibly wonderful teachers around the country. I've found that there are engaged parents who have great concerns, for their kids and what kind of education that they're getting and or not getting. And it's just incredible to travel around our wonderful country and to see all of the people who are very involved. It also then shows me places where they're not so involved and where we need to do some work to get things changed. It's been a fun year. So that was a fun year. Hard to believe a year's already gone by, or at least 15 months. Never enough time to do all of the good work we need to do.
I was reading a list of all the things you've accomplished, and it's breathtaking, actually. I should have brought it here and rattled it off.
Thank you for not doing that.
Well, just this morning you mentioned, right here in Pennsylvania, you were with us at a press conference urging Governor Shapiro to opt in to President Trump's Education Freedom Tax Credit. It's the largest federal expansion of education freedom in history. Can you explain how the tax credit works and why you are making such a push to get it implemented in all 50 states?
Sure. Well, this was part of, it was originally called the One Big Beautiful Bill. Then it became the Working Families Tax Cut Bill. And then what we were talking about this morning was the Education Freedom Tax provision that's part of that bill. And the reason that's so important is because it doesn't cost taxpayers one nickel. It is the first national opportunity for school choice around the country. And individuals can contribute any amount of money they would like to contribute into these scholarship granting organizations in states that are approved by the governor or the legislature or the school board, ever how it's set up in each particular state. And then those individuals who make those contributions can deduct up to $1,700 on their federal tax return. Dollar for dollar, $1,700. Now, what that means is you have all of this private money going into these scholarship granting organizations so that parents who feel that their children are in a failing school can apply for that scholarship and move that child to another public or private school. They can get extra tutoring for their child. If they have a child with special needs, they can get extra services or whatever that child needs. But there's so many things that money could be used for. So it's just incredible to me that we have they're mostly Democratic governors. We have, we have a couple of Democratic governors who've come on board, but that Democratic governors, that all governors wouldn't opt into this program. Because, I'll hear pushback. Well, it's going to take something away from public schools. It's going to take money from the public school system. To the contrary, this is all private money that's going to go into the states, into the education program. It couldn't be more of a win-win for students, in all states. So we were there this morning to say, if I took my pen off, my pen said opt in. But we were there to encourage Governor Shapiro to opt into this program. Governor Shapiro's he's followed some good things here in the state. There is a very similar state tax provision that's in place and done some school choice provisions in the state. So I'm surprised, actually, that he hasn't opted in. And so we were there to encourage him to do just that.
Well, I definitely think he probably he heard something about it. I promise you that.
We had good press coverage. We were on the steps in the Capitol Rotunda, so it was pretty well attended, and parents were there as well. So I think there was a lot of local press coverage this morning. So maybe he'll get wind.
Yeah. And I definitely want to take a moment to thank our friends at the Commonwealth Foundation for all the hard work that they've done on school choice. Okay, so this might be my second favorite question. So, President Trump tasked you to deliver one of his most momentous campaign promises, sunsetting the Department of Education and returning education to the states. Why is this issue so important to the president and to you, and what are you doing to give more local control to parents and communities?
Well, when the president called and asked me to take on this job, he told me that I would be successful when I fired myself. I said, well, It's not exactly the typical kind of pitch you hear to come on board and take on a task. But then, as we know, President Trump is not necessarily, your ordinary president who makes ordinary pitches. But the reason he is so focused on this, Mary, if you think about it, the Department of Education was established in 1980. Now, before there was a Department of Education, all of our Title I and all of our other title funding flowed. IDEA money for our special needs kids all flowed. That money, all of those laws and the appropriations for that come from Congress. Mm-hmm. The Department of Education is a pass-through that's got bureaucracy built all around it. And therefore, a lot of the money that's appropriated goes, for overhead and other bureaucratic regulatory compliance. And the president really felt, and I'll tell you what prompted him. This really was one of the big prompts for him, was not only had he seen that our schools were really not being successful for our students, but right after he took office, the NAEP scores, or our National Report Card scores, came out. And when he saw what I just referenced a moment ago, that only about 30% of high school seniors reading proficiently, about the same or less in math, across the country for 12th and 8th graders. He said, what in the world is wrong with our educational system? Plus the fact that we were like third from the bottom in the rankings internationally. And he told me that he not only was embarrassed, but he was angry about this. He said, we need to change this. And he said, this education department got stood up in 1980, and since then, the scores have gone like this, and we have spent over $3 trillion for failure. And he said, we don't need this. We didn't have it before. We did better than we've been doing with the Department of Education. And as I have learned since then from many states, in fact, I think the first stat that I was given was from the state of Tennessee, and that was for every dollar that went into the classroom, teachers spent about 47 cents in regulatory compliance. So let's let the money go to our teachers. Let's let the money go to our kids. And, teacher salaries, we have some teachers that are really fantastic. And I do believe that teachers should be paid on merit. I think if their performance is good and their kids are doing well, let's reward them for that. And so the president is really focused. It's not about that he can have a headline for closing down the Department of Education. He wants the real thing. He wants to see our students do better, and all the money that needs to go to them to go to them. And who knows better what our kids need? It is parents and school officials in the local communities. As the president said many times, and I echo those feelings, the best education is that's closest to the child. And I was with, thank you for that. And I was with Governor Pellin in Nebraska yesterday. He was the first governor. He told me he was the first governor to opt in for the Education Freedom Act. And he said, not only do I think that the money should, come into the states, he said, but from my perspective, I'm going to make sure that money gets right out to all the districts so that they can absolutely put that money in their districts where they know it needs to go. So the president's goals are very simple. Let's get rid of the bureaucracy of education in Washington. I actually had a press person, I don't know why it should surprise me, ask me, so you want to get rid of education in the country? Oh my God. No, we want to make education better. We want to get rid of the bureaucracy of education, and we want all the money to go to kids. We want states to adopt the programs, even though we don't control curriculum. We want to provide toolkits for best practices all around the country for schools that are showing programs that have been successful.
That's fantastic. I'm looking for the day when the doors are closed. And
well, one thing, just this may be one of your questions getting to, but I'll jump ahead a little bit.
That's all right.
Just to show how we're actually making this happen, because I said to the president, I said, sir, you do realize that I can't just shut the light off and walk out. There are a lot of things that we're going to have to accomplish in order to do that. And ultimately, Congress has to vote on closing the Department of Education and eliminating the office of the Secretary of Education. And so I am working, very closely with Congress, members of, on the education committees on both sides, to show them we have proof of concept. We are signing what are called, am I jumping ahead for your question?
You are just fine.
So what we're doing is signing interagency agreements, which we're allowed to do, which government does all the time. You're almost subcontracting with a different agency that can do something that you're doing in your agency, but do it better, more efficiently, with more expertise. So we have begun signing these interagency agreements. We are co-administering programs now. For instance, we moved all of our adult education programs over to the Department of Labor. There were 23 different adult education programs from different agencies around the government. So we wanted to consolidate them, with labor. Makes sense to me. We have a great relationship with the Secretary of Labor, Alora Chavez de Raymer, and so I've told Congress, I said, just let me prove to you this will work. And then I'm going to ask you for your vote. I'm not going to ask you for it now. Let me then prove it'll work. So we've signed several of these interagency agreements. The one that was announced last week, which I bet there'll be no disagreement with anyone in this room, it was with the Treasury Department to take over student loans that are, that money that comes from the federal government, which amounts to $1.7 trillion at this point in time. I don't think it's been managed well by the Department of Education. If you think about it, that makes us the 5th largest bank in the United States, and I'm running it. I'm not a banker, nor have any of the other secretaries of states that have been there been bankers. So we need good, strong policy, but we need it to be in Treasury where we all know they're accustomed to collecting money. They've got Internal Revenue Service there. They're very efficient at collecting money. So we know those programs through their servicing and everything are going to be handled much better. So that's an example of what we're trying to do. It makes sense. It's efficient. And I think we're going to have our proof of concepts for all of the programs that are currently being handled by the Department of Education. And the money that's appropriated through Congress will then pass through that agency responsible for those particular programs. And or if it doesn't have to go through an agency, it will go directly to the states. So I think that's going to be I think in the end, hopefully, we will be able to convince members of Congress that this is how it's going to work, and we will have showed them that in these first steps it is it's more efficient and it's successful.
Great. The number that was associated with the student loans was just mind-blowing to me, and I'm sure to many of you. So I was very excited to hear about that shift and all the other work with the interagencies. It's fantastic. Fantastic. Now I'm going to ask you a question that I know for a fact it's very near and dear to your heart. Workforce acceleration to address our state's looming labor shortage, including expanding apprenticeships and access to career and technical education opportunities, is a priority for AFPI in Pennsylvania. Why is this also a priority for the Trump administration? And what are you doing to strengthen career pathways for our students?
Well, thanks for that question. It's a bit of a long answer. It's as though I haven't been giving long answers. But we have a workforce shortage in our country today. And for every 2 skilled workers that are, for every 5 skilled workers that are retiring, only 2 are coming back into the workforce. And if we continue on that path, by 2030, we'll have a 2.1 million workforce shortage here. And as the president is working very hard to bring manufacturing back into the country, we need this skilled workforce, even before that growth. But even with that additional growth, we need much more members of our skilled workforce. By the way, the skilled workforce is the fastest growing sector of millionaires in the country. So I think we have to rethink education in our country. You know, it's all, for many, many years, and I was part of that. I certainly encouraged my children you've got to go to college. You've got to go to college or you're not going to have an opportunity to be successful. And a lot of the thought process was, hey, my kid wasn't smart enough to go to college, so we'll get them into a vocational or a trade school, at least they'll be able to make a living. Now, it's very interesting. Last week, I heard a young man that was actually in a vocational or a trade school or community college. I don't remember which one it was. He said, he said, I had the choice. He said, I could go to a 4-year college. He said, but here I am at this trade school because this is what I want to do. I know this is the way I'm going to have the best opportunity to make a living, and I'm going to have fun at what I'm doing. So we've kind of reversed that whole process. And I have been visiting some community colleges and trade schools that are truly phenomenal. I was at one yesterday in Nebraska, and I've been to several across the country. And I was told today I needed to go to, I think, the #1 rated community college in the country that's in Reading, Pennsylvania. And so with many different programs that they have there, so I'm going to try my best to get out there. But what we're seeing now are high schools getting back to what they used to do, let me date myself a little bit, when you had shop and when you had other skilled courses that were taught in high school. Well, now at an advanced level, they're working with community colleges. They're dual certificates or dual accreditations from these community colleges to the high school. And now kids graduate with not only a diploma, but they can also graduate with a certificate to start work immediately. It's a 2-year program, or they can continue and get a 4-year degree. They can go right to work, into the workplace. And it's not mutually exclusive. You can do both. So with these dual credentials, I think the statistic yesterday that I was told at the community college was that kids who participate in these dual credentials pay 65% of what it would cost if they were just without coming through the dual credential program. But in many instances, there are manufacturing companies in the area who are paying for those scholarships. Kawasaki was the one that was yesterday in Nebraska. I mean, they can't hire people fast enough. And I've seen Caterpillar, Toyota, General Electric, Boeing, many of the big companies that are sponsoring these apprentice programs in these community colleges because they need a workforce. They want them ready to go. So not only are they sponsoring kids at the community colleges, but the kids will go to school for 3 days a week. 2 days a week, they are on the floor of that company learning that skill so that when they finish the program, they are qualified and ready to go to work right away. And that's what we need to see more of.
Well, I couldn't agree with anything you said even more. It is the most important thing that we are working on in Pennsylvania. So I'll be looking forward to visiting in the time span where we're going to start working with our legislature and our manufacturers and across the board to improve the situation. Okay, I'm going to step back to our nation's report card.
Excuse me.
The recent nation's report card shows that we face a literacy crisis. What will it take for us as a country, and what are you working on as Secretary of Education to turn this around?
Well, I mentioned those scores a second ago, and it was one of the most appalling things to me, when I came in. Now, the Department of Education, contrary to what a lot of people think, does not control curriculum anywhere. We don't hire teachers. We don't buy books. We don't do any of that. But what I have seen around the country for those states that actually are bringing their scores up, we can look at Mississippi. It's called the Mississippi Miracle. Louisiana, Texas, Florida, Iowa. These programs are being instituted with innovations at the state level through programs called the Science of Reading. Now, this is actual research. This is putting things in place. It's how we all learn to read. It's phonetics, sounding words out. This combination of letters sounds like this. If you put a P in front of it, it's pat. If you put an H in front of it, it's hat. If you put a C in front of it, it's cat. Very simple. Now, of course, there have been advances on how it's taught, but that's the basics of it. We got away from that. And kids, weren't learning how to read. They couldn't sound things out. And I sat in a middle school classroom yesterday, and also, more impressively, in a pre-K through 2, and I sat in a second grade and a first grade classroom. In the second grade classroom, not only were they reading well, they were, ironically, and they swore to me this was not because I was there, they were actually learning, what makes up the federal government? What are the branches of government? Now, it wasn't called the executive branch, it was called the president, it was called the Supreme Court, and it was called Congress. But they were all learning about, what they were doing. But they were reading and writing and answering questions. That's what we need to do. But these innovations are coming from the state level. They're not dictated from Washington. It's not part of the bureaucracy of the Department of Education. So if I can put together, as I mentioned, the toolkits that say to different states, these are things I have seen. This is how it's working. Please contact this superintendent of education in this state. Please see how they were doing it. And as I've met with, once a year, all of the state superintendents come to Washington. Both parties, they're all there. And those are the things that we were talking about a month ago. And we're going to get there. But it took Mississippi, I think, almost 10 years, once they knew they had a problem, to reintroduce it from kindergarten through the states. So time's now. Time is now. Let's get moving on this so we can close these gaps.
That's awesome. Well, we still have a couple minutes, and I'm really glad I get to ask this question, so I think everyone in here will get excited about it. As we close, we are just a few months away from celebrating our country's 250th birthday. What can you share about the department's civic knowledge-focused initiatives that are underway in the run-up to July 4th?
We're doing two really fun things. Not only am I touring all 50 states, with the program of bringing education back to the states, et cetera, but leading up now to our 250th celebration, we're doing a History Rocks tour.
Very cool.
And one of our coalition partners, AFPI, thank you very much. And so it's wonderful. We're taking an actual assembly program into schools. And there are questions on the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, but we're doing it in game-like fashion. And, questions come up on the board, and teams from two sides, two teams, sort of like Family Feud. But the questions are all relative to history and civics. And so there are two different time frames during the contest, and one is open to the entire assembly. Questions come up, and the kids have a placard. On one side is the U.S. flag, on the other side is their state flag. So there are a couple of questions on the board, and, for instance, who wrote then, the Declaration of Independence? If it's this answer, hold up the flag. If it's this answer, hold up your state flag.
That's fun.
Kids get so involved, and then I get to go out and throw T-shirts out into the crowd, because they were so participating. And then the Family Feud, kind of works on the same thing, except they're teams. It's amazing. Some of these assemblies, we've had ROTC groups come in and present the colors. School band played, our national anthem. And I mean, we've had hundreds of kids in some of the assemblies. Sometimes they're small, but getting the message out there. The other thing we're doing is the Presidential 1776 Presidential Civics Award. So we've had kind of like a Civics Bee across the country. Over 8,000 students took online what was called the Impossible Test. They had 90 minutes to answer over 4,000 questions. So, and actually we had about 3,000, I think, who actually took the test, and then we're down to, I can't remember how many is it, Savannah, do you remember? How many students we have that are actually taking the regionals?
I believe regionals, 184 will be at regionals.
So we've narrowed it down now to 184. They're going to take the regionals at 5 presidential libraries, and then those finalists will come to D.C. to participate in the finals that'll be at the Trump Kennedy Center. And so we're hoping to get, some good publicity and coverage, and there are scholarship dollars involved for first place, second place, and third place, over $250,000. So it's creating that interest. across the country. So we're having lots of fun doing it, and the kids who are participating really got into it. So we're in there. We're doing our thing.
Fantastic. Well, I have the giant stop sign, so I think that means we have to wrap it up. And
Oh,
I just
shucks.
want to thank you. I want to not only thank you for being here with us today, but I want to thank you for your continued service to our country. We know you could be doing so many other things with your time in your life at this point, and you've made that choice to serve in the administration, and we couldn't be
Well, thank
happier.
you. Not only am I honored, but it is a privilege to do it. Thank you all very much.